mom or your dad or your peers or your grandparents
maybe,
or your aunts, your uncles. It doesn't really matter who. That is like just repeating what you've seen done. Yeah. So we have an example, that happened between us before, where I may have been talking to Greg. He may have been responding. He's not, like, we've hit a point of conflict. He's not interested in conversing anymore. He wants to just, like, talk about it later. Mm-hmm. And I have, like, ramped up my energy, right? I've gotten more aggressive, right? And been like, no, like, we need to talk about it right now. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, why don't you want to discuss this? Like, why are you running away from the conversation? Like, that type of language, right? Mm-hmm. In a much higher tone. As a result, he then becomes, like, more soft. And he's like, babe, like, I don't want to talk about it right now. Like, I really just need a break. Da-da-da-da. Mm-hmm. So, in my mind, I'm becoming more aggressive towards him because I think that's what men do, right? In my observation of men between men interacting, I'm thinking, oh, like they're rough with each other. They call each other. Yes, this is what I'm supposed to do. Right. Even if it's not what I want to do, this is what I'm supposed to do to get the response where we'll then like meet together and we'll have a resolution. So I'm thinking that I need to meet his lack of aggression with more aggression. I'm trying to balance it with my masculine energy and his feminine energy, right? He's being more soft, I'm being more aggressive. And that's not exactly how that works. And so I'm thinking in my mind that because he's a man, and this is all stereotypical, and because men are hard, and they're tough, and they're aggressive, that I as a woman need to be like that in order to be heard in a man's ear. And that's actually usually not true, right? So then it limits the man's ability to be generous, to be soft, to be confused, to be unsure, right? All of those qualities we associate with maybe a different side of a man. I'm not giving him the opportunity to have that full range of emotions. And the same with me, right? He may expect me to kind of be a certain way and find that how he's approaching me is actually not positive, right? And so in the same way, he may approach me very aggressively, but for me, that's a very triggering thing. So then that makes me become more soft, which makes him be like, well, I need to be more aggressive because she's going to then match me with her aggression, and then we're going to come to a resolution. And so for me, even I saw that as a kid, right? Like my mom and my stepdad, they were very, it was a very kind of abusive situation, just straight up, like verbally abusive and physically abusive. And as a kid, even if I didn't want to, I was learning that communication style. Yeah. Right? Like learning like, oh, this is what adults do when there's a conflict. They talk aggressively towards each other. Right. They make these gestures. That's how you solve this. That's how we saw that. But as a kid, I never saw the resolution. And the resolution was that it didn't work. Right? They didn't end up staying together, and there was a lot of problems. But as a kid, even if I didn't want to learn that, I was learning that behavior pattern. And so a lot of us, we're walking into these relationships, and we're walking into conflict resolution with these behavior patterns that we've watched and observed for many years of failed relationships, and even just failed communication points, right? Like the people that might still be together that you watched, but they may not be communicating properly. They might not be living in abundance. Still together don't like each other very much. And so we're reenacting these behavior patterns completely unawares. I have a girlfriend, when her and her husband get into it, she emasculates him. Right? Now that's a new word, right? That's not something that she thinks that she's doing, but she'll say stuff like, you're not even man enough to da-da-da-da-da. Things like that. She's thinking in her mind that she's doing the right thing. She's doing the thing that men do to each other. She's lighting the fire. Yes, but it's totally horrid. It's horrible. He hates it. It doesn't work for him, right? And shuts him down. Yeah, it totally shuts him down. And so she's doing that because she observed between other men call each other certain names and be like, man, you're not even man enough to so-and-so. Between a man and a man, that's a different conversation than between a husband and a wife. Right. Do you see what I'm saying? But as women, I think sometimes we learn this vocabulary, these emotions, these behavior patterns by either observing men do it to each other and being like, oh, okay, so that's how that works. If I say this, it's going to get the right response. Or we see people do it in a couple situation and we think that that's effective conflict resolution. Mm-hmm. And in fact, she's completely deteriorating him. She's completely hurting his feelings, right? Yeah. But she doesn't understand how that's possible because it's a pattern that she's learned how to perpetuate. Yeah. So we really have to be aware of these behavior patterns that we're walking into the relationship with, because when you're mirror to mirror, you're going to be able to, if you are with somebody who can see you, they are going to show you who you are. Oh, yeah. You may not like that reflection, but you're going to have to deal with it if you want to get to that next level of the relationship, and especially when it comes to conflict resolution. Yeah, and nice. I was going to say, basically, like that replicates unhealthy masculinity right there. Mm. Like I'm listening to the conversations around toxic masculinity, and I ain't gonna lie, I don't really care too much for the word toxic. I believe in the power of words, and I haven't always been great with it.
I'm a poet, but sometimes I'll say some stuff that I have to think about how that came out, right?
We all do.
But toxic is, and I have a biology degree. Toxic is a strong word. People go look it up. If you're putting that on people, that's energy, bruh. It's not good. It's poison.
Mm-hmm.
It's also predictable.
And it's and it lacks compassion. The whole thing, right? This toxic masculinity, and you just listen to people anger, and you're like, fam, listen, I get the patriarchal struggle. I understand the power. I understand this country is hetero-patriarchal, white men,
But every man's problem isn't your man's problem.
And that's the thing.
And I think that's the problem that I have with toxic masculinity.
And that's what I'm saying. Like
a generalization.
I think it's a big, but we're in that time. We just talk about consideration, compassion, patience, kindness, forgiveness, redemption. Those are all acts of love. And in the microwave society, it's very hard to come upon that. So what happens is people have been coming up words to dismiss a conversation and at the same time make people disposable because it actually takes work to build relationship. If you can't have communication, you don't have a community. And right now what's happening is a lot of our communities are falling apart because we're not communing. We're not having dialogue. Dialogue is dying because everybody thinks digital. Not everybody. I don't want to generalize. Sure. But a lot of people think digital spaces is where you can have a productive conversation. You lack so much vulnerability. You lack intimacy and all those things. And so the point I was going to bring up is what is being left out of the conversation around unhealthy masculinity is how it perpetuates through women also and non-binary folk and whoever else because it's an energy. And if we're going to talk about it, we got to talk about every realm of it. Like, it's just something that everybody can own at certain points. And when the friend you were just talking about is emasculating, it's the same thing when they say, don't cry, you punk. I ain't raising no punk. Like, we've seen mothers put that on their children. And then what happens? That young man grows up internalizing all the issues and trauma the mother may have, and then turns out to become somebody that is what? Unhealthy, emotionally, and can't relate to manhood in a way that is responsible and balanced and has room for flexibility and growth and transformation because we do have to hold ourselves accountable when we talk about masculinity.
Sure.
And I think the only way we get there is if we're honest with ourselves. Like, I can hear, I've been having conversations in my own head, and I can feel the truth coming from me, through me. And that's fine. Everybody's not going to get there at the same time. But the reality is, it's playing out in our relationships as well. And so it's an ongoing conversation. I think that the only way we get through this conversation is to actually have interface.
Like, have the interface and don't generalize the conversation.
Stop generalizing people because
it's not a place for social media and things like that. But I think moreover, when I say, look, not every person's problem is your person's problem. And I think when it comes to that kind of thing, it's very likely that, as we mentioned before, that you might have grown up in an environment where